All right, welcome into the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. Appreciate you for being here. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the B Block Podcast right here on YouTube if you are not already. And y'all know what we're here for, man. The last time we were here yesterday, we were talking about the Rockets and reacting to the KD files, alleged KD files, and talking about how are they going to move forward and is it going to be awkward and what is this going to look like? And really more so even, I would say their legitimate basketball concerns that the Rockets had. And I talked about this, man, like the offensive adjustments, the clunkiness on that end of the floor in general, the over-reliance on Kevin Durant, and what do you do when that's not working or when they double team and all this other kind of stuff, right? We talked about the fit of Alperen Sengun and Reed Sheppard on the defensive end of the floor and Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson on the offensive end of the floor, right? Like all of these things that we're going to have to reconcile or work themselves out through the back end of the season. And real curious, at least I know I was, to see how that was going to play out in the first game back from the All-Star break. And I tell you, man, watching this game, in the very beginning, it felt like, oh man, we're gonna be in for a long back end of the season, man. This is gonna be a lot of the same old, a lot of that clunkiness that I talked about, a lot of what I think I called this on the radio, feels like it's become atypical Rockets offensive basketball is what that first quarter felt like. And then they flipped the switch. Then they found something that actually worked for them. And I think you could make the case that it was particular to this matchup and who was actually out there and who was guarding who. But when the Rockets went small, they got big. I mean, there's really no other way to look at it. It's like when they went small, they got big and they really started to control the game. So that's what I really want to get into. I also, even more so, like, I'd like to acknowledge a handful of Rockets in this game that I think deserve some acknowledgement. And it all come together here. We can start with Kevin Durant. Let's start with Kevin Durant. And look, I admit I'm clearly not as tapped into some of the Rockets internet chatter as, as maybe some of y'all are, or as maybe I should be. But I don't be seeing any of the stuff about people saying that we shouldn't have. I guess I see a little bit of it, but I don't see a whole lot of the stuff about the Rockets shouldn't have traded for Kevin Durant or that was some kind of mistake. I see it here and there, but it's a very, very small contingent. If there's a lot of that, I got to say, man, I don't get it. Kevin Durant goes out there, has 16 in the first half, finishes with 35, shot 70% from the field. I mean, what else can you say? I made the case that this is either like, this really just depends on glass half full, glass half empty, or how you want to look at it. It's like, oh man, you had to rely on Kevin Durant to score 35 points on 70% shooting just to beat a team by 4 points. Or you could say, man, sure is nice to have a dude that can give you 35 on 70% shooting, on a given night. And that's not the every night like this is not what Kevin Durant's going to turn in every night. But just sensational, man. 70% from the field, made all 5 of his free throws. Just incredible. So, and shout out to Sengun and Senior Buble in the chat right now. If y'all got any Rockets questions, y'all can drop them in there. Any comments that y'all want to share, y'all can drop them in there. But I start with recognizing Kevin Durant. Maybe that one's too obvious. Can I move over to Ime Udoka? Because to me, this is the big one. this is the big thing that we saw that was encouraging to me, at least, that all this talk about Udoka being stubborn or not having answers. Look, we got to hold him accountable, but we also got to give him credit where credit is due, right? You got to give him credit where credit is due, and tapping into the small ball. First of all, we've seen way more ball movement. I feel like we've seen way more plays, and not just ball movement, but player movement without the basketball over the last several games or so. So I want to give him credit for. I want to acknowledge that that's coming from somewhere. Got to get a coach credit for that. And then the small ball recognition of, like, I didn't get to obviously go to the game. It was in Charlotte. But I do wonder if Ime Udoka has had that realization at some point of, you know what, when they do the let's put a center on a men Thompson and a stronger, sturdier wing or guard on Alperen Sengun. When they do that, they're kind of playing one of these guys off the floor. And I need to make or could be at least. And I need to make a decision because there's already these spacing issues. But now I've enabled a help defender, an athletic, certainly like lengthy and probably athletic help defender in whatever center it is that's guarding Amen Thompson. And Alperen Sengun, we've seen now that one of the ways to be effective against him is not just guarding him straight up with a big or simply throwing double teams at him, but getting you a sturdy, strong ass wing that can body up with him. Because never mind that he can shoot over the top, technically can shoot over the top. What he wants to do is back you down, get into your chest, and get closer to the rim. What happens when he runs into a guy that's not allowing him to do that, like he did with Grant Williams in this game, or like he did against Stephon Castle against the Spurs, however long ago that was? So that's been kind of the under discussed. And then when I say under discussed, I'm talking about myself here. Whenever I talk about this little conundrum they got when they put a center on a men and a guard on Sengun, way too much talk about a men and what he needs to do. And I feel like not enough attention to the fact that it's a little bit problematic that you can just put a strong guard or a strong wing on your center, on your all-star center, and he can be rendered ineffective or at the very least less effective. So, and I'll get to Sengun in a little bit. I didn't mean for that to go into any kind of like tangent about Sengun, who I think is an incredible player, but I'm holding to a high standard these days. And I feel like that's fair. But Ime Udoka, though, when we talk about having answers and having counters, I feel like you got to give him some credit. At the very least, I'm going to give him some credit here on this podcast for kind of just having a feel for the game. Like the small ball lineup in the second quarter flipped the game for them. This essentially came down to Kevin Durant's individual brilliance on offense, but then the small ball lineup really tapping into something defensively. They were able to kind of really get after it and pressure the ball defensively. Early on, they were having a lot of trouble. They were blocking shots like crazy, but a lot of that was on help defense, and they were struggling with their pick and roll traps and just kind of guarding the pick and roll. And to Charlotte's credit, they came out shooting the ball really well. Y'all got to forget that sound. I don't know if y'all can hear that. They cutting grass at my neighbors next door. And this room is situated right next to, the other side of their yard. So I hope y'all not hearing that. But yeah, like the defense, while they were blocking shots, they were getting stocks, as we say, early, was still a little bit leaky, I think, until they put in that small ball lineup. Then it got cracking. And then offensively, I will point out, you kind of took out this desire whenever Shingun's not out there. There's not this obligation to feed Shingun or to feed the All-Star. Everybody can kind of just play. And of course, it helps the spacing to have really one non-shooter out there as opposed to two, which goes back to the fit issue that we've been talking about for a minute. So Shingun points out the way that they're guarding Alpi is the way Houston guards Wemby. There's something to that. Just get, and not just Houston, but who was it? Was it Phoenix? There were a couple of teams that have kind of figured that out, right? That was kind of a thing whenever the Spurs played the Rockets the second time. I feel like Wemby at that point had been struggling, and the source of the struggles, whenever that was the fact that this exact thing that we're talking about, putting a stronger, a smaller but sturdier and stronger guard or wing on the big guy. So Derek, shout out to Derek, says, you're absolutely right. If they're putting a 6'5" or a bigger guard on Alpi and he can't take advantage, that's a problem. Like, it's on them, and I'm using this right now to give Ime Udoka credit for kind of recognizing, checking the temperature in the room, reading the room, and recognizing and making the adjustment. But yes, as you say, Derek, that's a problem. And again, I'm not here trying to shit on Shingun. I know a lot of people are real defensive about that. But look, I'll just say it, man. That was a part of the post All-Star break analysis or outlook, if you will. At least for me. Will Shingun return to all NBA level Shingun that he was playing like in the very beginning of the season? We got some good moments from him last night. That spin move in the fourth quarter. He had a couple of shots in the fourth quarter that were pretty big. But anyway, I said I was actually trying to be nice, and apparently I got triggered a little bit. Not sure by what, but either way. Ime Udoka, Kevin Durant, Ime Udoka, Kevin Durant for his individual brilliance, Ime Udoka for his adjustments and leaning into the small ball lineup. I'm real curious to see how prevalent or how common it becomes going forward. Kind of making the comparison to the double big lineup revelation that happened right around this time last year for the Rockets and then carried over into this year until Steven Adams got hurt. Interested to see how that works out. Talk about Jabari Smith Jr. for a minute. Jabari Smith Jr., all right, somebody who much maligned, had an awful January. And I think it's just been an easy punching bag for people. That's what I've seen. Easy punching bag. But we also got to recognize when a dude turns it around, man. My guy Brad actually had the stat. Let me see if I can pull it up. He had his, and I could just look this up on NBA.com, but he had his last 15 games, what Jabari's doing. First of all, let's just go last night. Okay. Jabari Smith, 15 points, 6 to 8 from the field, 2 or 3 from 3, 7 rebounds. All right. So he had a block. Everybody got in on the block party. Should mention that with Kevin Durant too. 3 blocks. It was 35, 8, and 3 blocks and a steal. Jabari had a block and a steal. Stock. Shingun, who sounded like we were shitting on earlier, actually had 3 steals and a block. So they really got after it defensively. And I just felt like Jabari is somebody who, kind of goes without saying, but we should repeat it every time. Is just really important to this team, man. Just really his points. Forget what game it was, but they were interviewing Royale Ivy, I mentioned it here on the podcast. They were interviewing Royal Ivy at halftime or whenever, and Jabari was having a real good game. And he just said, man, his scoring is vital to our team. His points, his scoring is vital to our team. And it is, man, because again, he gets some of the easiest shots and is situated to play off of the guys that get the most attention. He's probably the best shot maker on the team who they don't really ask to create shots, if that makes sense. The best shot maker who's not a shot creator, right? Because Kevin Durant can create his own shot. Albert Shingun can create his own shot. Even Reed Sheppard, to I think a much larger degree than Jabari Smith, can create his own shot, even though he's smaller. So you can make maybe a case either way there. But so yeah, it's either Jabari or Reed, depending on how you look at that, right? And Jabari plays more. So you need him to be playing like this, is the kind of the long-winded version of what I was trying to say there. Derek shouts out, Jabari says he's been hooping lately, but the respect is never as loud as the disrespect. That's why I'm talking about it. That's why I'm here. Because I look at, for one, I like Jabari. Okay, so I don't really even like the disrespect to begin with. When he's playing poorly, I hate it for him because I think he's made of all the right stuff. Has had a good attitude since he got here. Been a good worker, model citizen. Like, I really got nothing bad to say about the guy. I find him to be pleasant. So I'm really rooting for him. When he's out there stinking it up, that's the awkward part. It's like, damn, this good kid who really wants it bad can't hit a shot to save his life. So like, it don't be no disrespect when we have to do that, but we got to do that to keep it a buck. Is that the one? I don't know if y'all listen to how many of y'all listen to the morning show, but on 610, I think "Keep It a Buck" was one of Sean Pendergast's pet peeves, one of his phrases that he doesn't like. Keep it a buck. It was really funny. I don't know if y'all heard it, but it was really funny because some of them were like cultural and age things. It's like, well, yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if this should bother you, but I get why you wouldn't say this kind of thing. But I'm gonna keep it a buck when it comes to Jabari. And if we're keeping it a buck right now, I should say, Jabari has been hooping lately, as Derek points out. And yeah, we gonna make sure that the respect here is as loud as the disrespect. And if he starts sticking it up again, we're gonna say that shit too. We're gonna keep it real around here, man. That's what we do. But he's been playing extremely well as of late. Got a little distracted here. I was gonna pull up. What are we doing here? Was gonna pull up these numbers. I let them get away from me. Jabari Smith over his last 15 games. Just about 7.5 rebounds. A little over a block and almost a whole steal. So basically 2 stocks. A little over 2 stocks. 48% from the field, 40% from 3, and 84% from the free throw line. That's Jabari Smith over the last 15 games. Let's put some respect on his name. And of course, we know with the KD files, the alleged KD files, there was also, this rush to crack jokes on Jabari. Stop it. Stop it. The dude is important to the team. As Royal Ivy said, his scoring, his shooting is vital to the team. I was gonna get here. So we on the same program right here, Derek, DFS. He was on the list. I don't know if I told y'all 4 or 5. I did 4 on In the Loop, and I extended it here because it's my shit. We got all the time in the world. That segment is only, however long. I'm in it for a whole hour, but that segment in particular is only however many minutes it is. So I added an extra name here. But DFS was on this list too. DFS. Derek says, I want to give praise to DFS too. He finally played more than 15 minutes, and it looks like his legs and the vision is what he can provide starting to show. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like DFS looked closest. Last night, I thought Dorian Finney-Smith looked closest to what he was intended to look like for the Rockets as we've seen all year. And I want to give him credit. Like, he's battled, man. He's been fighting through it. Like, he doesn't shortchange you on the effort. Reginald Atatula was in the loop talking about this when I was on with him, was mentioning the communication. You can tell he's out there talking. He's communicating. I think Ime Udoka has spoken on that. Like, he is a vital piece to what they do defensively when he's right, if and when he's going to be right. So, yeah, I'm glad that Derek brought up DFS because I certainly was about to. When we talk about the respect never being as loud as the disrespect. Now, I don't feel like I've been disrespectful to Jabari, but I have flat out said that the DFS signing was a flop. Said that as somebody that was a fan of it and was rooting for it. But as it played out, I felt like, man, this is going to be kind of a flop. That was impatience on my part. I got to acknowledge that because here we are just now getting back from the All-Star break, the first game back from the All-Star break, and DFS plays more minutes than he ever has. And physically looks like he's ready to play. And so I did mention this in the loop earlier. Like if DFS is the version or anywhere close to the version of the DFS that Rockets fans thought they were getting, I'm sure that the Rockets thought they were getting when they signed him, that's a bit of a revelation. That changes the story just a little bit. It doesn't put you over the top and mean that, oh, now you're going to the finals or nothing like that. But I think that does, like, if he's in the rotation and not just eating innings, if you will, but actually providing you valuable minutes like I feel like he did last night, that's going to be a big deal. Shingun asks, do you think it even bothers Shingun with the field goal percentage? The reason I'm asking, he was already 0 for 2 before he shot the third one. He still shot it. It seems he really doesn't care like we do. So you're saying based off of shooting the threes? Like I was surprised that he shot as many threes that he did, but I think that was just more so of a byproduct of him not wanting to be as physical as he needed to be with old swole ass, strong ass Grant Williams. Because see, the usual criticism of Shingun, or now I'm not gonna say usual, but the past criticism of Shingun would have been that he don't shoot enough threes. He's not aggressive enough at the 3-point line. He's not confident enough in his 3-point shot. And wondering why. Has he worked on it? You know, why is he not more confident in it? So I don't know if it's an issue of an issue of caring about the field goal percentage per se, but I think that was just a matter of how the game was playing out. Senior Buble says that I think people forget how good Bari was hooping last year before he got hurt and the Rockets turned to the double big. That's a good point. And then there was a frustration. I think people do remember the frustration of him sort of falling out of the rhythm of things, right? He goes to the bench and, fine. Then the postseason comes, playoffs come, and he seems like he's underutilized. They need shooting. He barely gets shots in most games. So, yeah, he has played good ball in stretches. His issue, I think, has been consistency, and I think a little bit of an underwhelming of what it actually is that you get. underwhelming feels harsh, but what I'm saying, like I think I've said this before with Adam Spillane, maybe on our podcast we used to do called H-Town Hoops. But the way I've described it is like, man, Jabari struggles to win sometimes because it always feels like whatever you get, you're left wanting a little bit more. Like you feel like, man, I feel like he could have done even a little bit more than that. You know, like there should be more there. And that could be an expectation thing. Not sure. But I like the kid. I like the kid a lot. Let me see what other questions we had. I'm not sure, Derek, if the 22 stocks was the most that they had this season, but that's a hell of a lot. It's got to be up there if it's not. Let's see. Yeah, I agree with this. I think, let's see, Senior Buble says, I think barring handles has been the biggest disappointment of his career. On the one hand, absolutely. Like the fact that the handle's not really, certainly not tight enough for him to create his own shot on a consistent basis. You know, like outside of the flow of the offense, like catching it on the, you know, as the ball swings around and then maybe putting it on the floor a couple of times. That you can't just give him the ball and say, hey, go to work. But I would say too that it's been one of the things that I feel like he's tightened up a little bit this year. Like don't get me wrong, it ain't great. I ain't saying it is, but it does look either it definitely looks tightened up, but even more so than that, he looks more confident now with it. Ooh, I see a good question from Shingun that I'm trying to see. Do I want to get to that now, or do I want to acknowledge my last guy here? Let's go ahead and acknowledge that, and I'm gonna keep a pin in there. Y'all see what Shingun just said in the chat. I want to get to that, especially since this guy is not somebody I'm going to acknowledge. The last one is Reed Sheppard. Okay, last one is Reed Sheppard, man, and look, I don't want to be the one that's like beating a dead horse or like just like overly repetitive, saying the same shit over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. But this kid, Reed Sheppard, is key. Like offense has to run through this guy when you're not doing the most obvious shit, which is giving the ball to Kevin Durant. Like I get that. You know, I wish Kevin Durant didn't play as many minutes as he does. But I don't mind when he's out there using the hell out of him. Okay. What I do mind is not having alternatives to that or viable alternatives to that. And I honestly think, man, that this kid is their most viable alternative to Kevin Durant. ISOs, relying on his individual brilliance. What do you do when he's double teamed? And shout out to the team as well. I mean, Udoka, the entire team, for like they're operating better out of the that stood out in the first half as well, that they were doing a lot better operating out of the double teams. But what else can you go to? What else can you go to? I mean, this guy, I saw Roosh Williams mention this on Twitter. Reed Sheppard using screens to dribble, penetrate, collapse defenses, and spread out the shooters is the thing that this Rockets team has been missing all season. It is squarely on Ime Udoka to find the right lineups to utilize this and help bring Reed and this offense to life. That was what Roosh said. And I only read that off because I don't think I could put that any better. I feel like I've said a version of that, or I'm just been kind of a card carrying Reed stand since they drafted him. But that's it. Flat out. So I already acknowledged Ime Udoka, but I want to go ahead and acknowledge Reed Sheppard, who had the best plus minus of anybody on the team, tied for the best in the game, along with LaMelo Ball on the other end, plus 11. Now, of course, we know plus minus is not a perfect stat because you got to factor in the flow of the game, who's out there, what stretches, and all of that kind of stuff. But because think about it, how perfect is it that your worst plus minus guys were two of your best guys in this game? Kevin Durant, -4. Dude had 35 points on 70% shooting. Jabari Smith, -5. Dude had 15 points on 75% shooting. Both of them hit a couple threes. They had 4 blocks between the two of them, 2 steals. So, but again, to the point, and then of course Tari Eason actually did have a little bit of a rough game, but you know what Tari Eason is going to give you. You can have a tough time getting me to complain about Tari, right? Because his energy is consistent, his shooting is a threat, even if he's not knocking down shots like he wasn't in this game. But the shooting is a known threat, and the energy and the effort and the defensive ability that he's going to provide you you can rely on it. I feel like you can rely on it. So everybody else was a positive for everybody that came off the bench was impactful in some way or another, in some form or fashion. So, but Reed Sheppard was the one. Reed Sheppard was the one. So before we get out of here, we've been here half an hour. This is probably double the amount of time I expected to sit here, but this always happens. I'm like, man, what am I talking about for 15 minutes? And then I come here and ramble for 30. Let me see. Derek says, my biggest flaw of Jabari, which I understand, is that he got to realize KD makes those turnaround middies over 2 people easy, but that's not him. He got to stop doing that. Well, you get why he does it, though. He's 6'10", 6'11", whatever he is, and he's a shooter. Like the shots that KD was taking, he had some degree of difficulty shots in that fourth quarter that were like, yo, that was what was so cool about watching the game, because Kevin Durant was excellent throughout the entire game, and then in that fourth quarter, he went kind of regal. Like there was one on the kind of going right, and like kind of pulls up at the blocks like a floater. It was like a floater, it was like a fadeaway floater, one-handed type of joint that he did. That was like, yo, who does that? He just almost went like he went up one-handed and just like dropped the ball in the basket, but from 12, 15 feet, whatever it was. So that one was crazy. And then the shot to kind of ice the game there at the end, where he's driving left, defense is collapsing on him, and he just kind of fades away. This big, tall guy just kind of fades away and knocks down the shot. It's just like, those are not shots that, not a knock on Jabari. Those are just not common shots. Not a lot of people, especially of that size, of that height, are doing that. He was basically doing Kobe things, but he's 5 inches taller. Shit is crazy, man, watching him play. It really is. Senior Buble says he thinks Amin is a better point guard than Reed. Let me say this. I don't think either guy is a point guard. I think both of them are. I think Reed is a combo guard and Amin is more of a forward, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, we used to have this term called point forward. I don't know if maybe they had it before then, but that's as far back as I can go. You know, think like Scottie Pippen, or even how Ron Harper became their point guard, the Bulls point guard in that back end of that 90s Bulls dynasty, right? Like a point forward. Lamar Odom kind of comes to mind for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't think either guy is a point guard. Like, I'm not trying to shit on the case that you're making, but but a better point guard. The thing about a man is that sometimes he's not as decisive. I feel like Reed is a little bit more decisive whether the decision ends up being a good decision or not, and whether the play ends up being a good play or not. He seems a lot more decisive and comfortable in it. Amen, not that he's uncomfortable, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't know if it's the athleticism, you know, like the physical superpower thing going on. He can do so much physically that he doesn't know what he wants to do. And not being able to shoot, I think, hurts him. But I don't know. I've said that, like, I don't mind a men downhill, paint touches, move the ball around. But to me, that's a little bit more limited than what you can get from Reed and, say, pick and roll, even dribble handoffs, because he can pull up on a dime and shoot. So I know you're talking about point guard, but I think, like, I try to think of it more so of just like shot creation as opposed to like point, because neither one of them is a traditional point guard. So that just kind of feels like a futile exercise. But in terms of like creating shots for yourself and others, I feel like Reed might be better at that. You think Senior Buble says he thinks that he's better at breaking down the defense and distributing. I think that Amin is just a better athlete and a more of a physical matchup nightmare than Reed Sheppard is. But I would say the thing that pauses me from going as far as that is that a men's handle is just not tight enough. You know, a men's handle is just not quite tight enough for me to call him a better point guard or say that he's better at breaking down the defense. But again, it shows you how incredible it is he is, because it ain't got to be all that damn tight for him to go out there and get you 15 to 20 to 25 on any given night. He's capable of that. So, all right, let me go back up to this one. Since we're talking about a man, actually, we had. Damn, did I lose it? Don't tell me I lost it. Shingun, here we go. What's your thoughts on the Amin extension with him being eligible for $256 million? Guys, I understand that he's eligible for an extension, and I'm inclined, if it was my money and if anybody asked me anything, if I was in charge of anything, I would be inclined to sign him to an extension. Okay? But a max extension, I would just say based off what? He's got a chance to have another to be on another all defensive team. So that would be two of those. I don't know if all NBA defense gets you the max extension. Now, it really comes down to what do the Rockets, okay? So I'm just saying that on the front end. I don't know about the max extension. But it comes down to what do the Rockets think about what he's going to become, what he's going to turn into. Right? What do they think about his future? And if they want to bet on his future, they might give him a max extension. We're projecting that this is going to be a guy worth a max extension. For me, I can't do it. I can't pay really anybody, but certainly not a guard, a wing player that hasn't really not only developed not a jump shot, but really like a consistent kind of offensive identity where, hey, we can run an offense through you. That was the thing I was curious. Like, would they be able to run an offense through Amen Thompson? Nah, I mean he can get his throughout the course of things, especially if they're defending and they're in transition. And like I said, man, I think that when he's under control, his paint touches can be really valuable for this team in terms of getting the ball moving and everything like that, moving the ball around the perimeter and stuff like that, getting the defense off balance. I think there's some real value in that. But you can't really run no offense around this guy. And defense, it's interesting because he's incredible. Amen Thompson is incredible. I would not do 200. I would not do the max extension. I don't think that has been put it to you two ways. I don't think the max extension has been earned. And I don't think that what we've seen so far, and I don't know if I would have felt this way a year ago. It's kind of interesting saying this now. But I don't think what we've seen so far suggests max extension, max player. Not yet. And look, I would love it if by the end of the season, by the time we get to the playoffs, that I just start singing a different tune and say something totally different and be like, man, you got to max extend this guy. I hope that happens. But as we sit here right now, as you ask the question, couldn't do it. Derek says he's not getting that. Do y'all know Stone? Yeah, no, I mean, it is worth noting. Şengün didn't get no max extension. Jalen Green didn't get no max extension. And, I think now he is technically going to be more accomplished than those guys at the time of his extension because Şengün got his extension before these back-to-back All-Stars. And Amen will have had, I think, his back-to-back all defensive teams. So that's a little interesting. But I'm with you, Senior Buble. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. Based off of what we've seen now, something changed. Juan Luis say, if Amen keeps shooting threes, we going home in the first round. They got to be careful about allowing them. They got to strike that delicate balance of confidence and not allowing teams to bait them into taking that shot. Because what it feels like whenever they take, it's like, man, do y'all realize that they want y'all? Like, this is their defensive strategy is not to necessarily guard you or contend with your shot, but it's more so to bait you in to letting him shoot the wide open shot. Because conventional wisdom tells us a wide open shot is a good shot. Let him shoot it. But it's painfully obvious that he cannot hit that shot on a consistent basis or anything close to a consistent basis or at a decent percentage. And so it's basically like a turnover. It's basically like a turnover. So as somebody who advocated for him to be confident in that shot early in the season and quickly got off of that, I'm right there with you, Juan. Of like, be careful, be wary of that shot when you wide open for that shot. That's because that's what they want you to do. Senior Buble says no to the max contract for Amen Thompson without a jumper. Also says you can't max him in when you didn't max Şengün or Jalen Green. You get a different point also in the franchise and organizational structure, I think now. That's a little bit different. But I would agree that he is no more accomplished or promising, I think, certainly than Şengün. I think Şengün might be the template. You know, Jalen Green's deal was very, very specific and peculiar. Or, very, very much a specific deal to Jalen Green, but Şengün's deal might be instructive with Amen Thompson. So something to think about. Senior Buble also says, right, I think he can earn it the rest of the season or this postseason. So we'll see. We'll see. But I definitely want to sign him. Not to lean too much into the max versus whatever, but like I hope they talking and I hope they find some kind of whatever the proper middle ground is. I don't have numbers and figures for y'all exactly what it's supposed to look like, but something less than the max, but something that keeps the guy here at least for the next 2 to 3 years after that, after the extension is signed, or after the rookie deal is over with. So that's where I'm at. That's all I got for y'all, man. I wanted to shout out the guys that really showed up in that game against the Hornets, especially given that, I didn't really hit on this a whole lot, or really, I guess, at all until just now, but especially given that Hornets run a couple of weeks ago, or, kind of leading up the week leading up to the All-Star break. I guess that was the week before that. A couple of weeks back, they lost those back-to-back games to the Celtics and the Hornets. And those are at home, by the way, and really was just like lifeless efforts, and it needed to look a lot different. It needed to look a lot different in this game, and it did. So, figure I shout them out. Shout y'all out, too, for being in the chat, for being a part of the show. I appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed if you are not already. You can also hit that like, because I think that type of stuff helps us as well. Leave your thoughts in the comment section if you're catching this on the rewatch. If you're listening on the audio only platforms, wherever that's at, come on over to the YouTube page and drop your thoughts in the chat as well. That's where we get active. So I want you to have an opportunity to be a part of that as well. Again, I am Brandon Scott, your host, B Block Podcast. Appreciate y'all again for being here. And until next time, y'all be good.